Hello to everyone and the internet. It is currently Monday, December 24th. I am Nathan of Washington and you are watching The Young Globalist. And this is the news. That'd be my cat. Kurt just won't leave me alone right now. But I got news to relate. Also, this is the last time you'll see the jacket like this, because pretty soon I'm going to patch it up with band patches. Love me some heavy metal. But anyway, I'm here to read you this article from The Nation about how things for Macron got bad so fast. The fault lies with both the French president himself and the political and cultural elite that formed him. It is painful to recall the hosannas that commentators across the world were singing following Emmanuel Macron's rise to the French presidency. After Brexit and the Donald Trump election, here was a dynamic, youthful leader who seemed capable of driving back the swelling tides of reactionary populism. Camille Chalev wrote in Haaretz that Macron's victory gives hope to the hitherto dependent lovers of democracy and decency everywhere. Arthur Goldhammer, the leading English-language commentator on French politics, argued in Foreign Affairs that it has given the Fifth Republic, which many had thought to be in its death throes, a new lease on life. As late as last April, Politico was titling a story, How Emmanuel Macron Became the New Leader of the Free World. Yet, after a fourth consecutive weekend of escalating protests by the Yellow Vest movement, Macron now seems to be hanging on by a few frail threads. These protests have seen thousands of people arrested, 3 people killed, and massive street violence. Last weekend, armored vehicles rolled down Parisian boulevards while major tourist sites and business shut their doors. Macron has attempted to calm the situation last week. He repealed the gasoline tax increase that sparked the protest movement. Monday, in a short and somewhat wooden televised speech, he promised an increase in the minimum wage. Yeah, like a log. Wooden like a log. Tax cuts for workers and pensioners and other benefits for low-income employees. It is too early to know whether these concessions will have the desired effect. They remind me of King Louis... Hold on a second. Okay, that's King Louis XVI, offering concession after concession to the burgeoning reform movement in 1789. But in each case many weeks too late after anger had flared and the demands had ratcheted up. Could there be a connection, like maybe that's just how French politics are done or something? Like the procrastinators? But even if the protests do begin to diminish, Macron's popularity is unlikely to recover for a long time. He has been gravely, perhaps fatally wounded. How did things get so bad so fast? After all, France is not in the grips of a depression or even a recession. While unemployment is high and economic growth anemic, the figures have not changed dramatically since Macron's inauguration. His party, Les Républiques En Marche, which he created over 2 years ago, controls an absolute majority of the National Assembly, and the opposition remains fragmented. The Conservative Party, Les Républicains, and the Socialists are both in disarray. In the end, the tragic fault lies both with Macron himself and with a political and cultural elite of which he is, in many ways, the pure product, to be sure. The protests did arise in large part in response to economic precariousness and pain. For French people who live outside of major cities dependent on their cars and surviving on low incomes, average gross household income is about $30,000 per year, an increased tax on gasoline that already costs more than twice what it does in the United States is no small matter. But while it clearly counted just as heavily for the Yellow Vests was the contempt they perceived as coming from Macron and his government. The president who opposed the new tax in the name of combating climate change was the same one who last year abolished the solidarity tax on the wealthy. It was the same one who overhauled the French labor code, making it easier for employers to fire workers. And was the same one who summoned the two chambers of parliament to hear him speak in the splendor of the royal palace of Versailles. This guy sounds like an American Democrat, favoring the rich over the poor. Familiar. It was, in short, a president who not only seemed systematically to be taking from the poor to give to the rich, but to be doing so in an intolerably disdainful manner. And Macron's initial silence in response to the protesters did nothing to disabuse them of this perception, leading both their numbers and their demands to increase sharply. By now, many of the Yellow Vests are calling not only for large-scale redistributive economic measures well beyond what Macron was conceded, but for major political reforms as well, including allowing for direct popular legislation through referendums. Many are also demanding Macron's resignation. The protesters' perceptions are not entirely correct. Emmanuel Macron is not a contemptuous plutocrat. Oh, really? I see little to show otherwise. He is rather something that France's elite educational and political system specialize in producing. A person with very little life experience beyond elite institutions, who has a largely intellectualized approach to government. Boo-hoo-hoo! That just sounds like an excuse. He is a smart man with some genuine insights into the history of his country and the role of the presidency, but he has little sense of how to accomplish the long, hard slog of governing, or of what to do when people resist falling in line with his elegant theories. He has an abstract compassion for the people and working classes, but little real sense of their lives, and seems puzzled by their anger. His speech on Monday marked the first time in his presidency when he spoke with any real empathy about the plight of the poor and working class. France's social elites reward intellectual sophistication in a way that their American equivalents decidedly do not. In France, the ability to discuss literature, art, and philosophy opens doors. Some of the most selective educational institutions in the country include general culture on their entrance exams, and ambitious young French students will devote themselves to studying for all of these important tests. Macron, the son of well-off doctors from the provincial city of Amiens, fits this pattern to an exaggerated degree. According to the campaign book he wrote for 2017 election, portentously called Revolution, he spent his childhood in books somewhat removed from the world. He had early dreams of literary glory when a teenager. He wrote a never-published novel about the Spanish conquest of Latin America. His first university degree was in philosophy, whereas American politicians invite scandal when they inflate their war records. Macron was accused of exaggerating the role he played as assistant to the eminent philosopher Paul Ricoeur, R-I-C-O-E-U-R, Ricoeur. He wrote Revolution without assistance, and in its most eloquent passage he mused that the secret, intimate paths of literature reveal the world's true depths, whereas in daily life we only gaze its surface. So in short, I'm just going to cut this about in half because this is a big article. Basically, Macron was an educated fool, an intellectual idiot. He knew how to think big, but he didn't know how to think small. What he should have been was a philosopher and educator, not a politician. He was in an entirely the wrong line of work. That would be my assessment. Let's see, his career path, once he put aside his ambition of becoming a philosopher, he shouldn't have done that, took him first to the ultra-competitive École Nationale d'Administration. École. That sounds too close to E. coli. And that's his alma mater. High percentage of France's political elite, now including 4 to 6. Most recent President Macron is finishing at the top of his class, thereby winning a place in an elite corps of civil servants. 4 years in government, blah blah blah. He clearly believed that national coalescence could only take place around the figure of a commanding and unifying leader. This is all the more true in Macron's case because his election was the result in great part of some astonishingly good luck. This is a big article. See, the French have been here before. Many times the country's political history is replete with episodes of aloof elites challenged by episodes of popular rage that they could not foresee. As an aristocratic survivor of the French Revolution, Count de Ségur wrote in his memoirs, "We were walking on a carpet of flowers and failed to see the abyss underneath. Sometimes these episodes of rage have sputtered out indecisively, and this could still happen with the Yellow Vests. Sometimes they have blown up into a destructive firestorm that left the country scorched for years to come. And sometimes they have burned more constructively, casting a light that led the country to abolish harmful privileges and to move toward greater equality and human dignity. The real danger today is that the protests might, in the end, clear the way for a reactionary populist to take power in the next presidential election or even earlier. Macron's tragedy is that despite all his intelligence and learning, and all the considerable goodwill he attracted after winning the presidency and parliament with a brand new party at age 39, he could not see this coming." In short, he should never have been a politician. That's the takeaway here, folks. He should never have been a politician. He should have continued aiming toward becoming a philosopher. The world probably would have been better for it. We need more philosophers. Less politicians, less career politicians anyway, and more philosophers. The world would be a much better place if that were to occur. He should never become president of France. That article talks, in that last statement, talks about how like a populist taking over from Macron would be such a horrible thing. Please. Everyone wants to blame populism and nationalism for the world's problems, rather than blame it where it really belongs. It rather belongs on human imperfection, or countries that choose to be warmongers, which has nothing to do with nationalism, unless you read Wikipedia, which of course will lie to your face. Because, you know, you can edit Wikipedia, and Wikipedia most likely has been edited by pro-globalist type people. Bottom line is, Macron should never become president. He was uniquely unqualified for the position. George Soros has been linked to an infamous riot in Turkey, and he's been forced to flee over the accusations. Honestly, I read the article pretty thoroughly, and honestly, if it really is true, then George Soros is almost like a real-life supervillain. It's ridiculous. I'm gonna have to look more into this guy. I'm not sure. He might just be like a real-life supervillain. The infamous riot I was speaking of was the one in 2013 in the Gezi Park protests, which was initiated by a person named Osman Kavala. I'm assuming that's a man. Osman sounds masculine. And he was backed by Soros. He was confirmed to be backed by Soros. My current evaluation of George Soros is that he's, by and large, a typical leftist globalist turd. He's more like something you should be flushing down your toilet than letting run your countries. And honestly, given the beliefs, the system of beliefs of the Freemasons, a side tangent here, given the beliefs of the Freemasons, the Brotherhood of Man, you know, no more nationalism, and all that, I wouldn't be surprised if the Freemasons are globalists, or might even be behind globalism itself. And George Soros might even be a Mason. I'll have to look into it, but I don't know that for sure. But they believe in that whole Brotherhood of Man sort of extreme anti-racist type stuff. In other words, they go too far the other way. I find that sanity in most issues is somewhere in the middle. Usually. Not always, though. But most of the time, certainly. But Soros was even recently accused of illegal insider trading, which is trading on the stock exchange through the obtaining of confidential information, meaning he knew shit about stockholders that he shouldn't, which sounds awfully dirty. And that was in France, and he's currently being sued by France for $2.2 million over his insider trading. And the latest protests and uprisings in Hungary could be linked to Soros. To Soros' money, as he was confirmed paying the more violent protesters. He's shady AF, this guy. Soros is a real piece of work, boy, let me tell you. I have not been doing this news show for very long, but I think I've been doing it long enough to identify when someone is dirty as all hell, and I would say that is definitely Soros. Like I said, guy's a real piece of work. Like, if there was a supervillain that I could honestly compare him to, I would say Ra's al Ghul would be a very pretty strong comparison. He's doing a lot of very Ra's al Ghul-like stuff with his money. But I just don't know what to do with Soros, honestly. And of course he refutes it. He refutes claims every time, because everyone knows someone who's really guilty is going to try and say they're innocent. Catalonia is now a host to a snap election and meeting in Spain while Spanish citizens protest their government. And are currently blocking access to Barcelona, which is probably why they're meeting in Catalonia. Now, if you're not familiar, Catalonia was trying to declare independence illegally. Right? They're not allowed to do that under the Spanish Constitution. But they went and tried to do it anyway. And the article I read about tried to claim that the Spanish government was a globalist government. And admittedly, a lot of immigrants did end up going to Spain. But I saw little to preclude any globalist agenda on their part. But it could be. I'm certainly open to that possibility. If someone could explain to me how they're globalist. Like, we know Brussels is, we know Britain is, we know Germany definitely is. France's government currently doesn't even exist. So, Spain could be in that little club. But this seems to me just more related to the whole Catalonian independence movement. Which I gotta say, you know what? I think it's kind of arrogant and forceful to declare that you just can't be declared independent. You must be a part of our nation, and we'll force you to stay. You know, that seems kind of a violent government force, extortive. You know, I think they should be allowed to stay. I think they should be allowed to stay or go as they please, but that's just me. Admittedly, it is in their nation's constitution, so it's probably over what most things like this are over. Catalonia is probably not getting a proper representation, and so that's why they're rioting now. I think it's just a continuation of what was already going on, in my opinion. But anyway, a Russian missile frigate has been headed toward the Ukraine, I have to ask myself, is Putin going to invade the Ukraine? I mean, he invaded and annexed Crimea, and Crimea gives him a straight shot to the Ukraine. Captures three or four, I think it was, three Ukrainian vessels, doesn't turn over the officers or the ships. And his general attitude towards the Ukraine lately has been one of an offensive nature. So one really has to ask themselves, you know, he's been very silent because, weird fact about Putin, he does not have a smartphone and he does not use social media. So that's probably why he's been seemingly very quiet. But in my opinion, because just the raw fact here is that there's just a Russian missile frigate headed toward Ukraine. But my opinion is that maybe he's planning to invade. Like maybe he's trying to build like a Russian superstate or expand the Russian Federation into a massive power. Possibly even bigger than the former Soviet Union. If so, that's kind of scary. That's kind of scary. Mind you, it is none of our business. Unless someone asks us personally to help, it is none of our business. But if that happens, maybe we should prepare ourselves in the event that a Russian superstate decides to get all arrogant and declare that they can destroy the United States. You know? Might get ourselves ready just in case. Better safe than sorry. As to the Ukraine, I sincerely hope you guys can survive this recent Russian behavior. Anyway, there's an article I gotta read for you here. This one's relatively short. And I gotta tell you, this is probably gonna piss some of you off. I know it pisses me off. Twitter warns U.S. journalist she could face death penalty for violating Sharia law. Twitter has accused a U.S. journalist for breaking Sharia law in Pakistan, warning her she could face the death penalty as a result. TGP's associate editor Christina Layla was sent an email by Twitter's legal department informing her that she violated Pakistan's blasphemy laws over a tweet she posted calling for burqas to be banned in the United States. The GatewayPundit.com reports the specific Pakistani blasphemy laws Christina violated are punishable by life imprisonment or death. Yes, you read that right. Twitter, an American company, warned an American citizen who was exercising their First Amendment rights about Pakistan's Islamic blasphemy laws. In a years-old, since-deleted tweet, Christina called for the burqa to be banned. This offended the Pakistani government enough to force Twitter to spring into action. Burqas should be banned in the United States. Not only they are highly oppressive to women, we have no idea who or what is hiding underneath the garment. Americans are used to seeing people's faces, and burqa breaks down non-verbal communication between people in public. The email from Twitter Legal read, "Hello. We are ready to inform you that Twitter has received official correspondence regarding your Twitter account at Christina Layla 1. The correspondence claims that the following content is in violation of Pakistan law, Section 37 of PECA 2016, Section 295B, and Section 295C of the Pakistan Penal Code. At Christina Layla 1. Twitter has not taken any action on the reported content at this time. We are only ready to inform you that content posted to your account has been mentioned in a complaint. This notice is not legal advice. You may wish to consult legal counsel about this matter. If you believe we have contacted you in error, please let us know by replying to this email. For more general information on legal requests, please refer to the following Help Center article. Sincerely, Twitter." Jamie Glazov, a Canadian columnist and critic of Islam, received the same warning after he tweeted out his new book, Jihadist Psychopath. Mr. Glazov explains precisely what Pakistani blasphemy laws Twitter is now warning about. So we are looking at the punishment of death, imprisonment, and or a fine, and all not necessarily in that order. Pamela Geller also received the same warning from Twitter after she criticized Sharia enforcer Linda Sarsour. Oh, God. Facebook also enforces Sharia blasphemy laws, and Google just approved Android apps for Muslims to report people who insult Islam and Muhammad. A Google-approved app for Muslims to report people who insult Islam and Muhammad. Feel safer yet? Christina is a first-generation American of Armenian descent. Her Christian family suffered intense persecution in the Middle East and came to America for a better life away from Islam. Now Christina, an American Christian, is being warned about Pakistan's Islamic blasphemy laws. Let that sink in. As it turns out, an American company is not so American. Personally, I don't think she really has anything to fear. They don't have any sovereignty here. She's an American citizen. Their laws do not apply to her. You know, that's Pakistan. She's not a Pakistani citizen. They have no sovereignty here. Their laws don't apply to citizens of other countries. That's crazy. But I bet they'd probably love if their laws did, naturally. But they don't. I mean, this is crazy. Even Google approving an app for Muslims. By the way, I am currently boycotting Facebook, and I've been doing so for the last 6 days, and I encourage all of my viewers to do the same. Please boycott the shit out of Facebook. I've currently been doing it for the last 6 days, and I will not stop until either they change their ways or have been completely destroyed. And you know what? Let's make the same for Google, and let's make the same for Twitter. Fuck all of them, those leftist supporting sites. Fuck all of them. She was exercising her rights as an American citizen. Their laws do not apply to American citizens. But I bet they would love if they did. More in the Sharia sickoism. The UK despotic government recommends 6-year sentencing for criticizing Islam. Or pretty much any group that neo-libs and globalists support. Which means also including homosexuals, transgenders, you know, anyone who's had a sex change, yada yada. Just for criticism. 6 years of your life are stolen from you for a little bit of criticism. Absolutely insane. That is literally like just straight up 1984 bullshit. Unfreaking believable, man. I'm telling you, the UK government is absolutely despotic now. They need their own yellow vest movement to shut the thing down and demand that they cut it out with this crap. All these globalist governments need to be shut down and made clear that the people will not go along with it. It violates the nation's sovereignty. It tramples on people. It destroys their rights. It changes nations into horrible, horrible places where no one should ever have to live. If you import the Middle East into a first world country, that first world country will cease to be the first world country and it will become just like the Middle East. That's what happened to Germany. Germany is the poster child. Enough said. This is a quote of Donald Trump going to be there for 3 months, and that was 7 years ago. We never left. When I became president, ISIS was going wild. Now ISIS is largely defeated, and other local countries, including Turkey, should be able to easily take care of whatever remains. We're coming home. This is what Trump said while slamming Mattis McGurk and defending his decision to bring the troops home. Mattis McGurk is obviously a shill for the military-industrial complex, because being in the Middle East creates demand for them creating more soldiers and more military technology, thusly making them very powerful. He's challenging their power base. He's taken their power away from them, which he can do because, again, he is commander-in-chief of the military. The military answers to the president, and he's not going along with the usual agenda. For a while I was worried that he might be, because Mike Pompeo was another shill for the military-industrial complex, and he had Trump's ear, and I was afraid he was going to influence him into being just like both Bushes and Obama, be another warmonger. And Hillary was also slamming Trump, saying we should stay in Syria. But of course, you can't explain how it's a threat to our national security without making the usual excuses of Russia's going to get more powerful, China's going to make more money, blah, blah, blah. How does that affect us? How does that affect us directly? How is that any of our business? She can't clearly point out how it's a threat to our national security, beyond just the usual fear-mongering. And sure, we should prepare ourselves in the event that China and/or Russia decides to become our enemy in the future. But that does not involve us being in the Middle East. That involves us staying home and reinforcing our borders. We're safer with them home than with them being over there, in my opinion. We're much safer with them here, protecting the home soil. It's obvious she just wants them to be in the Middle East. This is clear warmongering, in my opinion, from both Madison McGurk and from Hillary Clinton. Trump is not a warmonger. He's not a war hawk. He's not there to do proxy wars and steal oil and shit. He's not the typical politician in any sense. Anyway, that's it for the Young Globalist today, folks. I'm out.